With May the 4th looming and a release on the Nintendo Switch 2 later in the year, it felt like a good time to talk about this game. To get it out of the way early, unfortunately this game is in the shadow of Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor in just about every category. The premise of this adventure, I would argue, is more compelling than most of the Star Wars films and TV shows. Playing as Kay Vess, the sci-fi bandit, and her companion Nix, coming across the stormtroopers, a smuggler's paradise, had all the potential to be great. But Kay Vess is a weak protagonist.
Now, why'd you ruin it with a question like that?
Hi, I'm Obsessing Again. I'm not here to review, I'm here to deep dive. You name it, I've probably got an opinion on it. Before you go downvoting the video, Kay Vess isn't a weak character because she's a female. When you have a legacy of iconic female characters in Star Wars, it's more apparent when you aren't at that level. Her character is fundamentally flawed. The game's missions are centred around allegiances to different cartels and mob bosses of the Star Wars world. The setup had me believing we could have a grounded protagonist who isn't force using and maybe even an anti-hero. We come to learn throughout the story of how Kay Vess has been involved in crime, stealing, bartering, risking her neck for every credit for as long as she could remember. If we look at the likes of Han Solo, for every positive attribute is a slightly more nefarious one. He's charming but can be slimy. He's determined but at the detriment of putting others in danger. I think people identify with him because he's a more realistic guy in the setting of droids, talking bears and religious cult-wielding laser swords. Han Solo is grounded but also real. He's not the moisture farm boy or the princess or a guy who runs a city in the clouds. At the centre of it, he's a guy who plays with the cards he's been dealt with.
I got a job. Kind we used to dream about back on Kanto.
Well, I'm done dreaming, Kay. Look where the last one got me.
Kay has become accustomed to her surroundings, the Empire. She embodies a street rat, using Nix, her sidekick, as a fraudulent side hustle. At the height of the story setting, the Empire at the peak of their power, so as the antagonist, they should be quite feared. The opening is a reactionary character who is doing enough just to get by from score to score. But as the credits roll, Kay Vess is a reactionary character who is doing enough just to get by from score to score. For Kay, she's overly likeable. Being overly likeable isn't an inherently bad trait. You need to engage with your protagonist. For someone who's had run-ins with the law, stolen, she is overly sweet and kind. She comes into the story feeling overly polished, like a cliche Disney princess, just without a pause for a song and dance before the next scene. And because of this, her development as a character is half-baked. She is made to be a hero of this story, without the hero's journey. Like any story, there are highs and lows, but you don't feel it either way. The archetypal hero's journey is the fall and rise of a character. I think the game believes you will feel that through the side characters, but it doesn't materialise. I find that in the Star Wars franchise, it is at odds with itself in regards to wanting hardened characters. In the Disney Star Wars, you're either born good and stay good, or born bad and become good. For all the hate I have towards The Last Jedi, it's a film that actually examines greyness in characters. The likes of DJ, a fleeting side character who assists the rebels by helping them break into a First Order flagship. Unlike most Disney Star Wars characters, he doesn't act in a virtuous way of saving the rebels. He ends up ratting them out to the First Order for his own gain. Though a minor character, a presence like this is something I felt was missing from her. When examining the syndicates, sure you can double cross, but it's all tongue-in-cheek. The consequences aren't really felt, and if the stakes don't seem high, the cost in things not working out is inconsequential.
Oh, wow. That was close.
Kay should have been forced into making morally ambiguous choices. She's like a gun for hire, so maybe the guilt from a job would evolve a character. Maybe the mindless killing would leave an imprint. Like Lando Calrissian in The Empire Strikes Back, he was forced to bring his friend Han Solo to Cloud City, who would then become frozen carbonite. Whilst this link may seem trivial, the audience felt betrayed by Lando, a weight of guilt which would eventually be a motivation for Lando to save Han Solo. You might be wondering, a game called Star Wars Outlaws being an outlaw, could she just be a bad person, just looking to make a big score, and isn't afraid of hurting people? But the answer is no. Games will use flashback sequences that provide not only context to characters, but a chance to bring you into the feeling of a character. The fleeting flashbacks highlight that Kay might not have that hardened edge to be a galactic gangster. The appearance of her mum and how dispassionate she is highlights that her outlaw life doesn't come to her easily. Wanting to hone in on the emotional attachment we may pick up, but fast forward the years, she's running around pickpocketing and shooting a blaster. It wasn't a phase, it was a life choice, but it only adds to the confusion of her character. I feel a resistance for the Ubisoft team to truly commit, wanting her to be playful instead of poised. If you're going to all this effort of having galactic bounties and gang rivalry, why does our protagonist not have that grit needed to be the outlaw, or the heart to truly leave this world behind?
Easy. Gadik knew the risks, okay? I work better alone. Always have.
That sounds like Rico, not you.
What should have been the good, the bad and the ugly becomes the benign, the hollow and the missed opportunity. Characters like Ellie from The Last of Us has that bit of grit, that extra something to be brave and strong. Han Solo makes mistakes and is represented in his actions to change, to make a difference, but both of these two comparisons have an edge, a swagger or a bravado. Kay doesn't need to be that, but she needs to be something. Her motivations to make credits are dangerous, but her demeanour isn't. She's too safe to be an outlaw. She fades into the background from a dynamic setting. She is constantly towing the line and her character's done so by design. Her character isn't malleable to the story. She acts and interacts in the same way, regardless if you play as a dishonourable or like a saint. Her morality is shaped on her commitment to each syndicate group, befriending or exiling. Deep in the story, you can sit between hero and villain. I imagine in the world of Star Wars, many can sit in that midway point between Luke and Palpatine, is a position for Kay Vess. But for all the turmoil she goes through, there's no lasting impact. Luke lost an arm in his confrontation with the villain of the galaxy, and Anakin lost a life consumed by fear.
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
There are evident physical scars, reminders of the battles and demons that have been fought, and the emotional weight of the ones that linger, leading to a life of exile. For Kay Vess, brushing herself down, hopping on a speeder or ship, there isn't that reconciliation. Her motivation, the driving beat, is freedom, liberty in the lawless, a clean slate. Generic motivations, though understandable but not enough, is shown as for why. It's repeated she has a bounty and she is forced into a high stakes gamble of completing a job so big she can be light years away from where she already is. A lot of the reasons why I didn't care is because I couldn't invest. If you make a protagonist so vanilla, what can I latch onto as a player to compel me to not only complete the story, but to care about her outcome? As the stakes get higher during the story, she doesn't evolve. A resistant leader, sure, but it all feels very rinse and repeat and very Ubisoft.
Let's start running. I'll be back for you, Kay. I bet.
While Kay Vess's story is about finding your own path, choosing your family rather than inherited ones, the end of her arc is character with very little character. Maybe a lack of love interest steered away from tropes which should be praised, but an unremarkable protagonist continues to roam. Her resistance is admirable, but too many times during the story, a lack of regard for the ones close to her makes her seem more like an outcast than an outlaw.
Toshara. I'll take you anywhere.
Thank you for letting me obsess again.